Hey everybody, welcome to week 7 of class. Hey, this week we're going to be focusing on the post-war of 1812 era that historians and even contemporaries of the period called the era of good feelings. Normally when historians speak about the era of good feelings, they're largely referring to the presidency of James Monroe. And so really you're talking about a very short period of time, about 8 years of history, although as we will see, this era was far from harmonious. There were a number of things that were problematic that definitely demonstrated that it really wasn't an era of good feeling. But the reason why the period is called this is because, one, coming off the War of 1812, Americans feel incredibly nationalistic. You know, even though technically they didn't really win the War of 1812, they did have the final say in winning the Battle of New Orleans. Andrew Jackson is the great victor. That's going to propel him into the White House in many respects. And so we feel like $1,000,000, right? We were the underdogs, and we've got this strong sense of who we are. You know, in some respects, the War of 1812 gave the United States its spirit, its soul, its sense of self and identity. And so they're coming off this war feeling very patriotic, very nationalistic, and we as the United States are going to begin to implement various policies and economic practices to try to strengthen the country. We're going to increase the size of the military. We're going to implement Henry Clay's American system and implement protective tariffs and taxes. There's going to be discussions about building roads and really just trying to link the country together to really strengthen the nation, right? The other reason why it's called the era of good feelings is because up to this point, we've had kind of two parties, the Federalists and the Republican Party. But after the War of 1812, the Federalists are going to basically disintegrate altogether. And the reason for it is because they appeared very anti-American and unpatriotic, because right at the time when the Treaty of Ghent was being signed, right at the time that the Battle of New Orleans is won, they come out with some resolutions that they had put together at the Hartford Convention, where they're basically lampooning the war and saying how terrible it is, and they have certain demands. And so this all comes out right at the same time that we win the war, and so they look very unpatriotic, and ultimately it kills the Federalist Party. So you have this period of history that's sort of understood as the era of good feeling, but during this time you also see economic crisis. In 1819, there's an economic panic that rocks the United States. There's also sectional problems. Sectionalism meaning that the country has different sections that are not as unified as perhaps we would like them to be. You have the Northerners, you have the Southerners, and you have the Westerners, and there's definitely some sectional conflict going to happen, in large measure due to the Missouri Compromise, which we will talk about this week, okay? And so all kinds of different stuff that's going to go on that we're going to talk about. We'll also make mention of a foreign policy statement that the United States will issue, known now as the Monroe Doctrine. Wasn't called that at the time, but it was called that now, or it is called that now. And that Monroe Doctrine will really set American foreign policy well into the 20th century. And so we're going to be talking about a whole lot of different things. Of course, this week you've got your discussion boards, so make sure that you get those in on time. One thing that I would like to make note of is when I leave you comments and ask you to, either elaborate on something or to add some content, instead of editing your original post, simply just create a brand new post. It makes it a lot easier for me to see the new content so that I can more effectively and efficiently, in fact, assess these posts and get the grades in. So that's what we got for this week, guys. If you have any questions, as always, contact me. I'll get back to you. Otherwise, as always, go in peace, be warm and filled. May the force be with you. Live long and prosper, and may the odds forever be in your favor. Have a blessed week.